The space station Concordia floated in the dark between two worlds. On one side hung the blue marble of Earth. On the other side glowed the red planet of the Dragon People. Dr. Kim Tae-ho pressed his face against the cold window of his small room. His breath made fog on the glass as he watched the two planets spin slowly in space. Tae-ho was tired. He had been awake for 20 hours preparing for today. Today would be the first time humans and dragons would meet in peace. For 300 years, the two races had fought wars across the stars. Now both sides were ready to try something new. They were ready to try friendship. The Korean scientist was 42 years old with kind eyes and gentle hands. He had spent his whole life studying alien life forms. But he had never seen a real dragon. No human had seen one up close and lived to tell about it. All they knew came from damaged warships and broken pieces of dragon technology. Tae-ho pulled on his best white lab coat. The fabric was clean and pressed. On the chest was a patch that read, Dr. Kim Tae-ho Xenobiology Research Division. His hands shook a little as he fixed his black hair in the mirror. Today would change everything for both races. The hallway outside his room buzzed with activity. Human soldiers walked next to scientists. Engineers carried boxes of gifts for the dragon delegation. Captain Dalsu marched past with his military uniform perfect and his face serious. The captain had fought dragons in the border wars. He did not trust them, so Jin the engineer waved at Tae-ho from across the hall. She was fixing a broken light panel with her usual smile. Sojin could fix anything. She had helped build this space station in just 6 months. Her tools floated around, her in the low gravity as she worked. The main meeting hall was huge. It had been built specially for this day. The ceiling was made of clear glass, so both delegations could see the stars above them. Round tables sat in perfect rows. Translators checked their equipment one more time. Guards stood at attention along the walls. At exactly noon, the dragon ships arrived. 3 massive vessels appeared out of hyperspace with flashes of green light. They were beautiful and terrifying. Each ship was the size of a city. Their hulls were covered in scales that shimmered like jewels. Energy weapons lined their sides, but the weapons stayed powered down. Tae-ho felt his heart beat faster as he watched through the hall windows. The largest dragon ship extended a docking tube toward the station. Metal clanged against metal as the two structures connected. Red lights flashed to show the docking was complete. The dragon delegation entered the hall 15 minutes later. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but there the similarity ended. Each dragon was 3 meters tall, with scales that changed color in the light. Their eyes glowed like small suns. Wing membranes folded against their backs. When they moved, the air itself seemed to shimmer around them. The dragon leader was magnificent. She wore robes of gold and silver that flowed like water. Her scales were deep purple with edges of blue. 2 smaller dragons walked beside her. One was bright green. The other was silver like starlight. All 3 moved with ancient grace. Empress Yura spoke first. Her voice was like music made of crystal and wind. The translator devices turned her words into Korean and English and 12 other human languages. She welcomed the human delegation and spoke of hope for peace between their peoples. Captain Dalsu answered for the humans. He spoke carefully about friendship and trade, about sharing knowledge and exploring the galaxy together. His words were good, but his body language showed he was ready to fight if needed. Tae-ho listened to the speeches, but he was more interested in studying the dragons themselves. Their scales seemed to pulse with inner light. Their movements were too smooth and flowing to be natural. These beings had evolved in ways humans could barely imagine. The formal meeting lasted 3 hours. Both sides exchanged gifts and signed preliminary agreements. The dragons gave the humans crystals that stored vast amounts of data. The humans gave the dragons samples of Earth music and art. Everyone smiled and spoke of a bright future. Then disaster struck without warning. The space station shuddered like it had been hit by a giant hammer. Emergency lights began flashing. Red. Alarms screamed through the halls. The artificial gravity flickered on and off, making everyone float and then crash back down. A maintenance worker ran into the hall, shouting in panic. One of the main power cores was overloading. If it exploded, it would destroy the entire station. Everyone had to evacuate immediately. Chaos filled the meeting hall. Dragons spread their wings and hissed in alarm. Human soldiers drew weapons out of instinct. Diplomats screamed orders at each other. The careful peace of moments before shattered like glass. Captain Dalsu took command of the human evacuation. His soldiers moved quickly and professionally. They guided the diplomats toward the escape pods. So-Jin ran to help shut down the damaged systems. Her tools sparked as she worked frantically at control panels. The dragons moved differently. They did not panic, but they did not help either. Empress Yura gathered her delegation together. They spoke in their musical language too fast for the translators to follow. Then they began moving toward their ships. Taeho found himself swept along with the crowd toward the evacuation routes. People pushed past him in their hurry to reach safety. He stumbled and almost fell as another power surge shook the station. Sparks rained down from damaged ceiling panels. That was when he heard it. A small crying sound coming from behind an overturned table. It was barely audible over the alarms and shouting, but something about it made Taeho stop running. Something made him turn back. The sound came again. It was definitely crying, but it was not human crying. It was something else entirely. Taeho pushed against the flow of evacuating people. He crawled under the overturned table. His hands searched in the darkness behind scattered chairs and fallen equipment. The crying got louder as he got closer to its source. His fingers touched something warm and scaly, something small that trembled with fear. Taeho pulled his hand back in shock. The small creature under the debris made another crying sound. It was definitely not human. The scales under his fingers were warm like living metal. They pulsed with a soft blue light that grew brighter when he touched them. The space station shook again. More ceiling panels crashed down around him. Emergency lights cast crazy shadows across the evacuation hall. People were still running and screaming, but their voices seemed far away now. All Taeho could hear was the small, frightened crying. He pushed aside a fallen chair and saw it clearly for the first time. A baby dragon no bigger than a house cat lay trapped under a twisted piece of metal. Its scales were deep blue like ocean water. Tiny wings fluttered weakly against its sides. Golden eyes looked up at him with pain and terror. The metal beam across its back leg was too heavy for such a small creature to move. Dark blue blood seeped from where the edges cut into its scales. The baby dragon tried to pull free but only hurt itself more. Its cries became weaker as shock set in. Taeho knew he should run. The power core could explode any second. Captain Dalsu was shouting for all remaining humans to evacuate immediately, but looking into those golden eyes, he saw something that stopped him cold. He saw the same look his own son Junwoo had given him in the hospital. The look of a child who needed help and had nowhere else to turn. Without thinking about the danger, Taeho grabbed the metal beam with both hands. It was hot from electrical damage and burned his palms. He gritted his teeth and lifted with all his strength. The beam moved just enough for the baby dragon to pull its injured leg free. The moment it was loose, the tiny creature did something unexpected. Instead of running away, it scrambled up Taeho's arm and wrapped itself around his neck. Its small claws dug into his lab coat as it pressed its face against his shoulder. The crying stopped. Soft purring sounds came from its throat. Taeho felt warmth spread through his chest. The baby dragon was so small and fragile. Its heartbeat fluttered against his neck like a trapped bird. Without thinking, he cupped one hand under it for support. The other hand gently stroked its back between the tiny wings. The space station lurched violently to one side. Sparks exploded from wall, panels all around them. Tejo struggled to his feet with the baby dragon still clinging to him. He had to get them both to the evacuation pods before it was too late. Running through the damaged corridors was like navigating a maze. Emergency barriers had sealed some passages. Others were blocked by fallen equipment. The baby dragon held, on tight with all four legs wrapped around Tejo's shoulders. Its small weight was nothing, but its trust was everything. They reached the evacuation bay just as the last human transport was preparing to launch. Captain Dalsu saw Tejo stumble through the doorway and waved him forward urgently. The captain's eyes went wide when he noticed the small dragon wrapped around the scientist's neck. "What is that thing?" Dalsu demanded as Tejo climbed aboard the rescue pod. "It's hurt," Tejo replied simply. He found a seat and carefully adjusted his lab coat so the baby dragon could rest more comfortably. "It was trapped. I couldn't just leave it." The other evacuees stared in amazement and fear. Some of them were diplomats who had been negotiating with adult dragons just an hour ago. They knew how dangerous these creatures could be, but this tiny version seemed completely harmless as it snuggled against Tejo's chest. So Jin squeezed into the seat beside them. Her engineer uniform was torn, and her hands were black with grease from trying to fix the station systems. She looked at the baby dragon with professional curiosity rather than fear. "Its leg is injured," she observed. "And look at how it holds on to him, like it thinks he's its parent or something." The evacuation pod launched away from the dying space station with a roar of engines. Through the small windows, they could see Concordia breaking apart as its power systems failed completely. Chunks of metal and debris scattered into space like deadly fireworks. The dragon ships were already gone. They had evacuated their people and left as soon as the emergency began. Only the human rescue vessels remained to pick up survivors and salvage what they could. During the 3-hour journey to the nearest human outpost, the baby dragon never let go of Tejo. It seemed to sleep most of the time curled against his chest. But whenever he tried to move it away or hand it to someone else, the golden eyes would open in panic. Tiny claws would dig deeper into his coat until he settled back down. The other passengers whispered among themselves about what this might mean. The first contact mission had ended in disaster. The peace talks were ruined. And now they had a dragon hostage or refugee, depending on how you looked at it. Dr. Martinez, the head diplomat, was already making urgent calls to Earth Command. She spoke in hushed tones about unprecedented situations and diplomatic complications. Her assistants typed frantically on portable computers, drafting reports about what had happened. Tejo ignored all of it. He focused on the small, warm weight against his chest and the soft purring sounds that seemed to calm his own racing heart. This tiny creature trusted him completely. It had chosen him as its protector in a moment of terror and pain. When they reached Outpost 7, the baby dragon finally lifted its head and looked around with bright, curious eyes. It made soft chirping sounds as it watched the docking procedures through the windows. One small claw pointed at the stars outside, as if asking questions Tejo could not understand. "I think it likes you," Sojin said with a smile. "Look how alert it gets when you talk." Tejo had been softly explaining what they were seeing as they approached the outpost. He had not thought the baby dragon could understand him, but it did seem to respond to his voice. The golden eyes tracked his face intently whenever he spoke. The rescue pod docked with a gentle bump. As the other passengers prepared to disembark, Tejo faced his first real decision about his unexpected companion. What was he supposed to do with a baby dragon that refused to let go of him? The answer came sooner than expected. As soon as they entered the outpost, medical bay, alarms began sounding. Not emergency alarms this time, but proximity warnings. 3 dragon ships had appeared just outside the outpost perimeter. They were broadcasting urgent messages demanding The return of something that belonged to them. Someone very important wanted the baby dragon back. The dragon ships hung in space, like three giant predators waiting to strike. Their hulls gleamed dark purple in the light of the nearby star. Weapon ports glowed with contained energy that could turn the small outpost into dust in seconds. But they held their fire and waited. Empress Yura's voice came through the communication channels like music made of ice and steel. She spoke in perfect human language now without need for translators. Her words were calm, but underneath them lay the promise of terrible consequences. "Return my nephew to me immediately," she commanded. "The hatchling bomb belongs with his own kind. Your interference in our family matters will not be tolerated." Admiral Chen, who commanded Outpost 7, was a military man with 30 years of experience fighting alien threats. But he had never faced anything like this situation. 3 Dragon warships could destroy his entire facility and everyone on it. Yet the creature they wanted was no bigger than a pet cat and seemed perfectly happy where it was. In the medical, Bei Teiho sat on an examination table with Bomb curled in his lap. The baby dragon had not moved from that position for 6 hours. Every time a nurse tried to approach for medical scans, Bomb would hiss softly and press closer to Teiho's chest. Dr. Sarah Kim, the outpost medical officer, shook her head in amazement. She had treated injuries from dozens of alien species, but nothing had prepared her for this. The baby dragon's wounds were healing at an impossible rate. The deep cuts from the metal beam were already closing without any medical intervention. "Its cellular regeneration is off the charts," she explained to Admiral Chen during an emergency briefing. "But more interesting is its behavior. It shows clear signs of emotional bonding with Dr. Teiho. This isn't just instinct or imprinting. The neural patterns are too complex for that." So Jin had been studying Bomb's reactions from across the room. As an engineer, she was used to solving problems by understanding how systems worked. She noticed patterns in the baby dragon's behavior that others missed. "Watch what happens when Teiho speaks Korean," she pointed out. "Bomb's scales change color slightly, and see how it moves its head to track sound patterns. I think it's actually learning the language." To test this theory, Teiho began speaking to Bomb in simple Korean words. He pointed to objects around the medical bay and named them clearly. Light, chair, door, water. Each time, Bomb would look where Teiho pointed and make soft chirping sounds as if trying to repeat the words. Within 2 days, something remarkable happened. Bomb spoke his first human word. "Appa," he said in a tiny voice like wind chimes singing. It was Korean for father or daddy. Teiho felt his heart nearly stop. The word brought back memories of his own son, Junwoo, who had died 3 years ago in a transport accident. Junwoo had called him Appa every day until the very end. Now this small dragon creature was using the same word with the same love and trust. Tears ran down Teiho's face as he gently stroked Bomb's small head. The baby dragon purred and nuzzled closer. His scales glowed brighter whenever Teiho showed emotion. It was as if Bomb could feel what the human felt and wanted to share those feelings. The breakthrough came when Sojin brought a holographic projector to the medical bay. She had loaded it with videos of Earth seasons, something she thought might interest their alien visitor. Dragons came from worlds that never changed. They had never seen snow or autumn leaves or spring flowers. Bomb watched the Earth videos with complete fascination. His golden eyes grew wide as he saw cherry blossoms falling like pink snow. He chirped excitedly at images of children playing in summer rain. When the video showed a father and son building a snowman together, Bomb looked up at Teiho and said his second human word. "Beautiful," he whispered. Over the following weeks, Bomb's vocabulary grew rapidly. He learned not just words, but concepts. Happy, sad, love, fear, friend, family. Each new word seemed to open up new ways for him to understand and express what he was feeling. The dragon ships remained in position outside the outpost. Empress Yura sent daily messages demanding her nephew's return. But she also began asking questions about his condition and development. Her tone slowly changed from anger to confusion to something that might have been curiosity. Dragon scholar Huan requested permission to come aboard and observe Bomb directly. Admiral Chen agreed, hoping this might lead to a peaceful resolution. Huan was old even by dragon standards, with silver scales and deep purple eyes that had seen centuries of galactic history. When Huan entered the medical bay, Bomb's reaction surprised everyone. Instead of showing recognition of his own species, the baby dragon pressed closer to Tai Ho and watched the adult dragon with suspicious eyes. He seemed to view Huan as a stranger despite their shared biology. Fascinating, Huan murmured as he observed their interaction. The hatchling has bonded with the human as if he were dragonborn. This should be impossible. Our species do not form cross-racial emotional attachments. Tae-ho had been thinking about this phenomenon for days. As a xenobiologist, he understood that different species had different social structures and bonding mechanisms. But what was happening with Bomb seemed to transcend normal biological rules. Maybe the bonding isn't about species, he suggested. Maybe it's about something deeper, about recognizing kindness and responding to it regardless of where it comes from. Huan spent hours testing this theory. He watched as Bomb played simple games with So-jin. The baby dragon had learned to laugh at her jokes even when he didn't understand all the words. He showed concern when Captain Dalsu mentioned being tired from double shifts. He even tried to share his food with Dr. Kim when she worked through lunch. Impossible. Huan kept muttering. Dragons do not behave this way. We value logic and strength and honor. We do not. We do not love so freely. But the evidence was undeniable. Bomb was displaying emotions and social behaviors that adult dragons rarely showed even to their own families. He was learning not just human language, but human ways of connecting with others. The most dramatic proof came when a minor accident injured one of the outpost technicians. The man cut his hand badly on some damaged equipment and was bleeding heavily. Bomb saw the injury and immediately became distressed. His scales flashed bright blue as he chirped frantically at Tae-ho. Without being asked or taught, Bomb climbed down from Tae-ho's lap and approached the injured man. He placed one small claw gently on the wound and closed his golden eyes in concentration. A warm glow surrounded his tiny form as he channeled healing energy into the cut. The wound closed completely within minutes, leaving only smooth, unmarked skin behind. The technician stared in amazement as Bomb curled up exhausted from the effort. No dragon had ever used healing powers to help another species before. Huan watched this display with something approaching shock on his ancient features. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "What have you humans done to him?" he asked. "What have you taught him to become?" Tae-ho worked late into the night in his temporary laboratory aboard Outpost 7. Data streams flowed across multiple screens as he analyzed brain scans, recordings, and behavioral observations. What he was discovering about human and dragon, neurology would change everything. Both species thought they knew about themselves. Bomb slept peacefully on a soft cushion beside the computer terminals. Even in sleep, his scales pulsed with gentle blue light. His small chest rose and fell with quiet breathing. One tiny claw rested on Tae-ho's arm as if making sure his adopted father would not leave without him. The breakthrough had come 3 days ago during Bomb's latest medical scan. Dr. Kim had used advanced neural imaging to study how the baby dragon's brain processed human language and emotions. What she found defied all known science about dragon biology. Bomb's brain was physically changing. New neural pathways were forming at incredible speed. Connections were growing between regions that never linked together in normal dragon development. The part of his mind that processed emotions was expanding and becoming more complex every day. But the truly shocking discovery came when Tae-ho compared these scans to his own brain patterns. There were similarities that should have been impossible. between such different species. Both brains showed the same unusual activity in areas linked to empathy and social bonding. Tae-ho ran the analysis program again to be absolutely certain. The results were always the same. Humans possessed a unique neurological trait that allowed them to form deep emotional connections across species barriers. Their brains literally rewired themselves to accommodate love and friendship with any creature that responded positively. This wasn't just cultural learning or behavioral adaptation. It was biological evolution, taken to an extreme level. Humans had developed the ability to expand their definition of family to include anyone or anything that showed them kindness and trust. The implications were staggering. This trait explained why humans had been so successful at forming alliances with dozens of different alien species throughout their expansion into space. Other races saw humans as unusually adaptable diplomats. The truth was that humans were neurologically programmed to love without boundaries. Tae-ho's research also revealed something equally important about Bomb. The baby dragon's brain was not just learning human emotions. It was actually developing the same neural structures that allowed humans to bond across species lines. Bomb was becoming something new, something that had never existed before. A soft knock on the laboratory door interrupted his thoughts. So Jin entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing her usual friendly smile. She had been helping with the research whenever her engineering duties allowed. "Any new discoveries?" she asked as she sat down beside his workstation. Tae-ho showed her the latest brain scans on his main screen. "Bomb isn't just learning to act human," he explained. "His brain is actually becoming partly human in structure. The neural pathways for cross-species bonding are growing stronger every day." So Jin studied the colorful brain images with fascination. As an engineer, she understood complex systems and could see the patterns Tae-ho was describing. "So he's evolving in real time," she said. "That's incredible. But what does it mean for his future?" Before Tae-ho could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the outpost. Not emergency alarms this time, but priority communication alerts. Admiral Chen's voice echoed through the corridors, requesting all senior personnel to report to the command center immediately. Tae-ho gently woke Bomb, who immediately climbed onto his shoulder with sleepy chirps. The baby dragon had grown slightly over the past month, but still preferred to ride around clinging to Tae-ho's lab coat. His scales had deepened to a richer blue color and tiny spikes were beginning to form along his spine. The command center buzzed with tense activity. Communication officers worked frantically at their stations while tactical displays showed the positions of ships throughout the local star system. Admiral Chen stood at the center of it all, looking older than his 60 years. "We have a problem," he announced as the senior staff gathered around him. "The Dragon delegation has split into 2 factions. Empress Yura and her progressive supporters want to continue negotiations about Bomb's situation, but Elder Myung-ho has declared her unfit to rule and is demanding immediate military action." Captain Dal-Su studied the tactical display with professional concern. "How many ships are we facing?" he asked. 12 Dragon warships have joined Myung-ho's faction," Chen replied grimly. "They're demanding we surrender Bomb within 6 hours or face the consequences. Yura's ships are moving to intercept them, but she's outnumbered 2-1. The situation was deteriorating rapidly toward open warfare." Tae-ho felt Bomb's claws tighten on his shoulder as the baby dragon sensed the tension in the room. Even without understanding all the words, Bomb could feel that something was very wrong. Hwan, who had been observing the human outpost for weeks, spoke up from his position near the communication console. "Elder Myung-ho represents the old ways of thinking," he explained. "He believes that allowing a dragon to bond with humans is a contamination of our racial purity. He would rather start a war than permit such evolution to continue." Dr. Kim stepped forward with a datapad containing the latest research results. "But the evolution isn't harmful," she protested. "If anything, Bomb is becoming more capable of complex thought and emotion than typical dragons. This could be beneficial for both species. Myung-ho's response came through the communication channels like thunder rolling across mountains. His ancient voice carried the weight of centuries and the fury of tradition being challenged. He spoke in the dragon language, but translators quickly converted his words to human understanding. The hatchling has been corrupted by inferior alien emotions, he declared. It can no longer be considered truly dragon. If you will not return it for purification, then it must be destroyed along with those who contaminated it. This abomination will not be allowed to spread its taint to other young ones. Baum understood enough of the translation to realize he was the cause of this conflict. His golden eyes filled with something that looked remarkably like human tears as he pressed his face against Taeho's neck. Small, frightened sounds came from his throat. "Appa scared," he whispered in his tiny voice. "Bomb bad dragon. Make trouble for friends." Taeho's heart nearly broke hearing those words. He gently stroked Baum's head while speaking in the calm voice he had always used with his own son. "You're not bad," he said firmly. "You're wonderful just as you are, and we won't let anyone hurt you." Empress Yura's transmission arrived moments later with an urgent request for private communication with Admiral Chen and Dr. Taeho. Her image appeared on the main screen showing worry lines around her ancient eyes that had not been there before. "The situation has become more serious than anticipated," she admitted. "Myung-ho has convinced many of our people that humans pose a threat to dragon civilization. He claims that your ability to emotionally bond with other species makes you dangerous manipulators who cannot be trusted." Admiral Chen leaned forward intently. "What are you proposing, Empress?" Yura's scales shifted from purple to deep gold as she made her decision. "I want to conduct a personal test. I will come aboard your outpost and spend one full day observing the hatchling and Dr. Taeho together. I will use my telepathic abilities to experience their bond directly. Then I will decide whether this evolution represents progress or contamination. The stakes could not be higher. If Yura decided against them, Baum would be taken away for purification, a process that would strip away everything that made him unique. If she supported them, it might split the Dragon Empire into civil war." Taeho looked down at the small creature clinging to his shoulder. Baum met his eyes with complete trust, despite understanding the danger they all faced. In that moment, Taeho knew he would do whatever it took to protect this extraordinary little being who had taught him to love again. "We accept your terms," he told the Empress. "Come and see for yourself what Baum has become." Empress Yura arrived at Outpost 7 in a small personal shuttle that gleamed like liquid silver. Unlike the massive warships that had surrounded the station for weeks, this vessel was built for diplomacy rather than destruction. Its hull bore ancient dragon symbols that spoke of wisdom and judgment. Taeho waited in the docking bay with Baum perched on his shoulder as usual. The baby dragon had grown noticeably over the past month. He was now the size of a small house cat with scales that shifted between deep blue and emerald green depending on his mood. Tiny wing buds on his back had developed into miniature versions of adult dragon wings. When the shuttle doors opened, Empress Yura stepped out with grace that made the artificial gravity seem irrelevant. She was even more magnificent in person than she had appeared on communication screens. Her scales were deep purple, edged with silver, and her eyes held the accumulated wisdom of 3,000 years. Baum's reaction surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of showing recognition of his own species' royalty, he pressed closer to Taeho and made small, worried sounds. He had spent so much time with humans that adult dragons now seemed foreign and frightening to him. "Hello, nephew," Yura said gently, in the dragon language. Her voice was like music made of crystal wind chimes. Baum tilted his small head and looked confused. After a moment, he replied in careful Korean, "Hello, pretty dragon lady. You are Baum's aunt, yes. Appa told Baum about family. The fact that he answered in human language rather than his birth tongue spoke volumes about how completely his identity had shifted. Yura's ancient eyes widened slightly, but she showed no other reaction to this development. "I have come to understand. What you have become, little one," she said, switching to accented but fluent Korean. "Will you show me your new world?" For the next 24 hours, Empress Yura observed every aspect of Bom's daily life with Tae-ho and the other humans. She watched them eat meals together with Bomb, sitting in a specially designed high chair, chattering happily about everything he saw. She listened as Tae-ho read bedtime stories in Korean, while Bomb curled against his chest like any sleepy child. The Empress used her telepathic abilities to experience not just what Bomb thought and felt, but also the emotional responses of every human who interacted with him. What she discovered challenged everything she believed about her own species and about the nature of consciousness itself. Through the telepathic link, she felt Sojin's genuine delight when Bomb successfully repaired a broken toy using techniques he had learned by watching her work. She experienced Captain Dalsu's protective instincts activate when other personnel spoke too loudly near the sensitive baby dragon. She sensed Dr. Kim's professional fascination mixed with maternal affection as she monitored Bomb's continued development. But it was the bond between Tae-ho and Bomb that truly shook her ancient worldview. Through her telepathic connection, Yura experienced the pure, unconditional love flowing between them. It was unlike anything she had ever encountered in thousands of years of dragon civilization. Dragons loved their offspring, but it was a careful, controlled emotion based on duty and genetic continuity. What she felt between Tae-ho and Bomb was something far more powerful. It was love without conditions or expectations. Love that existed simply because two beings had chosen to care for each other despite being completely different species. The most profound moment came during Bomb's afternoon nap. Tae-ho sat in a comfortable chair with the baby dragon sleeping peacefully in his lap. Soft afternoon light streamed through the observation windows, creating patterns on the floor. Everything was quiet and peaceful. Bomb made small, sleepy sounds and pressed closer to Tae-ho's chest. Without thinking about it, Tae-ho began humming a lullaby he had once sung to his own son, Jun-woo. The melody was sad and beautiful, carrying memories of loss and hope for the future. Through her telepathic connection, Yura experienced Tae-ho's grief for his dead child and his healing through caring for Bomb. She felt his fear that this small dragon might also be taken away from him and his determination to protect Bomb no matter what it cost. Most importantly, she felt his complete acceptance of Bomb as family, regardless of species or biology. Tears began flowing down Yura's ancient face. In 3,000 years of life, she had never experienced such pure, selfless emotion. Dragon society valued strength and logic and tradition. They protected their young out of duty and raised them to be independent as quickly as possible. The idea of loving someone simply because they needed love was foreign to everything she had been taught. The breaking point came when Bomb woke from his nap and noticed his aunt's distress. The baby dragon immediately climbed down from Tae-ho's lap and approached Yura with concern in his golden eyes. "Aunt Dragon crying," he said in his small voice. "Bomb help make better." Without hesitation, Bomb climbed onto Yura's lap and wrapped his tiny arms around her neck in the same gesture of comfort. He had learned from watching humans hug each other. His scales glowed with warm blue light as he shared his own contentment and safety with his aunt. For the first time in her incredibly long life, Empress Yura experienced what humans called a family hug. Through Bomb's innocent touch, she felt echoes of every gentle moment he had shared with Tae-ho and the other humans. She understood finally what her nephew had become, and what he had gained rather than lost. "I understand now," she whispered as she gently stroked Bomb's small head. "You have not been contaminated, little one. You have been taught to love more fully than any dragon has ever loved before." The day concluded with an unexpected request from Yura. She asked Tae-ho to teach her some of the human customs that Bomb had learned. She wanted to understand how these emotional connections formed and why they seemed to make both species stronger rather than weaker. Tae-ho showed her how humans shared meals as social bonding rather than just nutrition. He explained how they used physical contact, like hugs and hand-holding, to communicate affection and support. Most importantly, he demonstrated how humans could extend their concept of family to include anyone who showed them loyalty and love. This is why your species has been so successful at forming alliances, Yura realized. You do not just negotiate with other races. You adopt them as family. Your empathy is not weakness, but incredible strength. As the test period ended, Bomb had one more surprise for his aunt. He had been working secretly with So-jin to create a gift using his developing mechanical skills and natural dragon abilities. It was a small crystal sculpture that glowed with inner light and played soft music when touched. "For Aunt Dragon," Bomb said proudly as he presented his creation. "Bomb make with love like humans teach. Want Aunt to remember Bomb happy with Appa." Yura accepted the gift with reverence appropriate for a treasure beyond price. She understood that it represented something unprecedented in dragon history. It was art created not for glory or tradition, but as a pure expression of love and gratitude. "I will treasure this always," she promised. "And I will remember what you have taught me about the true meaning of family." The telepathic connection had worked both ways during the test. Just as Yura had experienced human emotions, Bomb had felt glimpses of traditional dragon wisdom and strength. He was becoming something entirely new, a bridge between two species that combined the best qualities of both. As Empress Yura prepared to return to her ship and face the rebellion within her own people, she made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She would not order Bomb's return for purification. Instead, she would demand that Elder Myung-ho and his followers witness the same test she had undergone. "If they refuse," she told Admiral Chen, "then we will know they fear truth more than they value tradition. And that will tell us everything we need to know about who deserves to shape our species' future." The Great Assembly Hall aboard Empress Yura's flagship had been constructed for this historic moment. Representatives from both species filled the massive chamber, while holographic displays allowed millions more to watch across the galaxy. Dragons perched on crystalline formations that grew from the floor like frozen music. Humans sat in chairs arranged in careful diplomatic rows. Tae-ho stood at the center of it all with Bomb riding proudly on his shoulder. The baby dragon had grown considerably over the past months and now measured nearly 2 feet from nose to tail. His scales had deepened to a rich sapphire blue with edges of silver that caught the light. Small horns were beginning to emerge from his forehead, and his wings had developed enough to allow short gliding flights. Elder Myung-ho dominated one side of the assembly hall like a mountain of ancient fury. His scales were deep black with red, edges that seemed to glow with inner fire. He had lived for over 4,000 years and represented the oldest traditions of dragon civilization. To him, Bomb was an abomination that threatened everything their species had built. "Behold the result of human corruption," Myung-ho declared in a voice like grinding stone. "A dragon hatchling that speaks alien words, shows alien emotions, and has forgotten the proud heritage of his birth. This creature is no longer worthy of the name dragon." Murmurs of agreement came from the conservative faction, while progressive dragons shifted uncomfortably. The division within their species had grown deeper over the months of debate. Some saw Bomb's development as evolution, while others viewed it as contamination. Empress Yura rose from her throne with dignity that commanded instant silence. Her scales had shifted to deep gold during her time observing human customs, a color that traditionally indicated wisdom gained through experience. "I have witnessed the truth of this bond," she announced. I have felt through telepathic connection what my nephew has become. He has not lost his dragon nature. He has gained something our species has never possessed. He has learned to love without conditions or limits. The conservative dragons erupted in angry hisses and roars. How could their empress speak favorably of such obvious weakness? Love was a luxury that interfered with logic and strength. It made beings vulnerable to manipulation and control. But Yura was not finished. She activated a holographic display that showed brain scans and behavioral analyses gathered during her observation period. The data painted a clear picture of what was happening to both species through their interaction. Humans possess a neurological trait that allows them to form emotional bonds across species barriers, she explained. This is not learned behavior, but biological evolution. Their brains literally rewire themselves to accommodate love and loyalty with any being that responds positively. Dragon scientist Na-Ri, who had been studying the data for weeks, added her support. "The implications are extraordinary," she said. "This trait explains human success at diplomacy and alliance building. They do not just negotiate with other species, they adopt them as family." Elder Myung-ho's response shook the entire assembly hall. "Exactly why they are dangerous," he roared. "They are emotional parasites that corrupt pure beings into becoming dependent on their false affection. The hatchling proves this contamination spreads like a disease. The accusation hung in the air like poisonous smoke. Many dragons had feared exactly this explanation for human diplomatic success. Were humans simply master manipulators who used artificial emotional bonds to control other species? Taeho felt Bomb's small body tense with distress on his shoulder. The baby dragon understood enough to realize he was being called diseased and corrupted. Tiny claws dug into Taeho's lab coat as Bomb pressed his face against his adoptive father's neck for comfort. "Appa," Bomb whispered in a voice barely audible, above the arguing delegates. "Bomb really sick? Bomb really wrong to love family?" The question broke Taeho's heart. This innocent child who had never hurt anyone was being told that his capacity for love made him defective, that his joy in learning and growing and caring for others was a corruption of his true nature. Taeho made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He walked to the center of the assembly hall carrying Bomb and requested permission to speak directly to both delegations. "You want to know what humans have taught Bomb?" he said in a voice that carried clearly through the vast chamber. "Let me show you exactly what he has learned." He gently lifted Bomb from his shoulder and set him down on the speaking platform. The baby dragon looked impossibly small, surrounded by hundreds of adult beings from two species. But he stood straight, with his tiny wings spread for balance and his golden eyes bright with determination. "Bomb will tell truth about learning," the small dragon announced in his clear, high voice. "Bomb tell what humans teach about love and family and being brave." The assembly hall fell completely silent as every being present focused on the small creature at its center. Even Elder Myung-ho stopped his angry muttering to listen. "Dragons teach Bomb that strong means never cry, never show fear, never need help from others," Bomb began. "But humans teach different thing. They teach that real strong means you can cry, when hurt but still keep going, means you can be scared but still do right thing to protect family." He turned to look directly at the conservative dragon faction with courage that seemed impossible in such a small being. "Uncle Taeho lost his baby son before Bomb come," he continued. "Uncle very sad, very broken inside. Dragon way say forget sadness, become hard like stone. But human way say sadness makes heart bigger, so can love more people more deep." Bomb's scales began glowing brighter as he spoke about the most important lesson he had learned. "Humans not make Bomb weak," he declared. "They make Bomb strong enough to love dragon family and human family both same time. Love not make you sick. Love make you brave enough to protect what matters most." He walked over to Elder Myung-ho despite the ancient dragon's intimidating presence, and looked up at him with complete sincerity. Elder dragon, very old, very wise, but maybe never learn this lesson, Baum said gently. Maybe afraid to try because think love make you weak. But Baum can show if elder want to learn. The challenge hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. This tiny dragon child was offering to teach one of the most powerful beings in their civilization about emotions that dragons had avoided for millennia. Elder Myung-ho stared down at Baum for long moments while the entire assembly held its breath. His ancient eyes showed confusion and something that might have been curiosity fighting with thousands of years of rigid tradition. "What would you show me, hatchling?" he asked in a voice softer than anyone had ever heard from him. Baum smiled with pure joy that lit up his entire small face. "Baum, show elder what feel like when someone love you just because you need love, not because you strong or smart or important, just because you there and you family." Without hesitation, Baum climbed up Myung-ho's massive leg using his small claws for grip. The ancient dragon could have shaken him off easily, but remained perfectly still as the baby settled against his chest and wrapped tiny arms around his neck. "This called hug," Baum explained, as his scales glowed with warm blue light. "Humans do this when want to share happiness and make someone feel safe. Elder try feel what Baum feel right now." Through the physical contact, Myung-ho experienced something completely foreign to his ancient existence. He felt Baum's genuine affection and concern. He sensed the baby dragon's desire to share comfort and joy without expecting anything in return. Most shocking of all, he felt accepted and valued, not for his power or position, but simply for being who he was. Tears began flowing from Myung-ho's eyes as 4,000 years of emotional barriers crumbled under the assault of pure, unconditional love. His massive body shook with sobs as he experienced for the first time what it meant to be loved rather than feared or respected. The sight of the most traditional dragon elder crying while holding a baby who had learned to love from humans sent shockwaves through the assembly. Conservative dragons stared in amazement while progressive ones wept openly at the beauty of what they were witnessing. When Myung-ho could finally speak, his voice was changed forever. "I understand now," he whispered. "We have been fools to fear this gift. The humans have not corrupted the hatchling. They have taught him to become more than any dragon has ever been. They have shown him how to bridge the gap between species through love." Empress Yura rose from her throne with tears streaming down her ancient face. "Then we are agreed," she announced. "The hatchling will remain with his chosen family. More than that, we will establish exchange programs so other young dragons can learn what he has learned." The assembly dissolved into celebration as beings from both species embraced the possibilities of a future built on understanding rather than fear. But at the center of it all, Baum remained curled against Myung-ho's chest, sharing the simple gift of a hug with someone who had forgotten how it felt to be loved. 6 months later, Tai-ho watched from his new office window as the first group of dragon and human children played together in the education center courtyard. Baum, now nearly adult-sized but still emotionally young, moved between both groups, teaching dragon children human games and showing human children how to glide on developing wings. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Tai-ho opened the communication to see his ex-wife's face smiling at him from across space.